It's good to be able to intro someone for your own company. It's even better to have them in your own org. So next up is Mike Mucciarone. He's one of our senior DevOps engineers, and he's going to talk about the run anywhere mindset. So Mike, you ready?
Guys, how we doing this morning? Everybody enjoy breakfast? I had a flat tire. I didn't get to eat breakfast. A bit about me. I am Mike Mucciarone. I grew up in Florida, North Central Florida, near the University of Florida. Any Gator fans? Anybody? Couple, one? Okay. I actually like the Seminoles better. I got to Texas as fast as I could. I said I wasn't going to make that joke. I got here when I was 18 and went to Baylor. Yes, thank you. Out. I am currently a DevOps engineer here at Capital One, and I am a Docker and automation enthusiast. I like making things go without having to touch them again. It's a lot of fun. I'm a musician, and when I say I'm a musician, that Baylor University is a music degree. I studied music and made the jump into tech. And I'm here to tell you anybody can do that. And I have another talk about that, but that's not this talk. I'm also a video and effects editor. I have a lot of fun with that. I'm an avid science fiction and fantasy reader. I read a Game of Thrones long before it was cool. And I'm a gamer. My big time sink right now is Destiny 2. Hunters, right? Hunters for the win. Destiny 2, and it's probably going to be a bigger sink now that they're coming out with the next expansion tomorrow, right? And I need to take a minute and talk about Capital One. I know Arjun talked a little bit about it this morning. We're more than just credit cards. We have auto lending, retail banking, commercial banking. We are a startup in bank years. We're still led by our founder. We're all in on DevOps. When we say we have a DevOps culture, we really do have a DevOps culture. I will say that. I've been here a year. It has been an amazing experience. We are cloud first and aggressively moving into the cloud, very aggressively moving into the cloud. And we open source some of our own products. Hygieia is one of them, also Cloud Custodian, and we also use open source as much as we can. But what I'm here to talk about today is the idea of run anywhere, building an application in such a way that you can put it into any environment, any cloud, and run that with minimal tweaking to the code. We're going to talk about the benefits of this. What does this get you? How to get there, because that's the most important thing, right? I can tell you all about this wonderful thing, but if I don't tell you how to get there, I really haven't done you a whole lot of good, right? And then I'm going to tell you what to do with it once you've achieved this. So first off, let's talk about what is run anywhere. What do I mean when I talk about run anywhere? Although I have to say, I think that quote sums it up pretty well. And here's a list. Here's a bunch of things. Containers, dependencies included. We don't care what operating system it runs on as long as I can run Docker, because Docker is the proverbial 120-ton whale in the room, right? It is containers as far as we're concerned right now. It's hardware agnostic and it's location agnostic. But I wanted to take a moment and tell you where this idea came from. It was a former manager of mine. I was the DevOps guy, and I was paired with the dev team. And we actually had an application that we had such a tight deadline on it, the only way we were going to get it out the door on time was to put it in the cloud. There's no way we were going to get this on-prem and make it work. And so we immediately put it in Docker. But security told us, once you've got this thing going and the platform, our on-prem platform is ready, which was a DCOS platform, you have to bring it back on-prem. So we did the opposite of what a lot of us are doing, right? We went from cloud to on-prem, or at least we were going to. And the only way we were going to do that was having this mindset ahead of time. And because we had this mindset ahead of time, when it came time to bring it back on-prem, it really wasn't that hard. It was actually quite easy to do. I was actually shocked the first time we made it work. It was a very interesting experience, and it was a very cool experience because it made it so easy. So what is this in practice? It means you can run it local on a laptop, or maybe you need to give a demonstration of this thing. You can run it in a dev environment. You can run it in QA, test, or staging. And that same code, that same build goes all the way to production, right? This is the holy grail of DevOps, right? We talk about this all the time. But it's also a mindset. Like I said, when you start with the code, when you build the code, that code needs to be smart enough to configure itself and to figure out where it's at. And we'll talk about that in a second. So what are some of the benefits? Well, like that quote says, flexibility. You can develop locally. Like I said a second ago, you can pull everything into your laptop, start up any backends you need, and just develop. You're disconnected. You're not waiting for some slow API sitting in a data center or sitting in the cloud. You don't have any external dependencies. You can then develop against your target architecture. If you need a Redis cache and a MongoDB as your backends, pull those containers down, run them in Docker, develop against them, and you're off, and you can keep on going, right? And if your entire org has this mindset, pull down their applications. If I need somebody else's API, I can pull down their containers and run it on my local laptop and develop against that. And then when you get to deployment, you package it up in a Docker image. This gives you so much flexibility, right? Because, again, we can deploy it anywhere. As long as we're thinking anywhere, that's what we can do. It's hyper-portable, again, with the anywhere. Hardware, software, cloud, 2 clouds, 3 clouds, doesn't matter. But it also simplifies your server installs. Your servers, this fleet of VMs that you may be maintaining in the cloud, or if you're still on-prem, all you need on them now is Docker. You don't need this crazy configuration script. All you need is a Docker runtime. And of course, the big one, the one that we all care about, cost savings. Right? This will save you money. You're going to use your resources more efficiently because containers are not VMs, right? They reuse the pieces of the operating system that's already there. They scale better. All you need is another container to scale this out horizontally. The maintenance is simplified. Why? Because you went from dev all the way to prod with the exact same code. Not only the exact same code, the exact same ones and zeros, the exact same bits went from dev all the way to prod. And if it worked in dev and it worked in QA, something's wrong with prod. And also like lower licensing costs. The idea of a lower licensing cost, if you're running an operating system that requires you to pay a licensing fee every time that you spin up a new instance, I'm thinking Red Hat Enterprise Linux or a Windows OS, hopefully you can pack these instances full of containers before having to put a new instance up in the cloud, and now you're paying for its runtime and its licensing and all that. So, how do we get there? How do we get to run anywhere? Well, the first step, and I've already said this a lot of times, we're going to containerize. We have to containerize our applications. And we have to do it right. We can't lift and shift. We've done lift and shift. How many people have lifted, shifted in here? How's it working out for you? I heard some groans. Bottling this, i.e. putting it in a container, doesn't help. You're going to have to make it more cloud savvy and container savvy. And we're talking microservices. Now, you can't always do microservices. You may not have the team. You may not have the time. You may not have the resources. But this is what really gets you to run anywhere because it makes you super portable. So I've sold it to you, I hope. Where do we really start? Well, we start off paying down tech debt. This will slow you down. It is the proverbial ball and chain around your ankle. Murphy's Law hasn't been repealed. It says what will go wrong at the worst possible time. And we all know what the worst possible time is defined as. It's your deployment window, right? I mean, that's always the worst possible time, and it'll happen. And some of the things here that I'm talking about that you should pay down are just the little quirks that you run into every once in a while when you deploy. You deploy something, and one little thing doesn't quite go right, and like, oh, shoot, I need to fix that. You do a quick fix on it, and you forget to put it back up in GitHub, or you forget to even just go close the loop, right? Go close that loop. Get these little tiny things that just get in your way out of the way, because that's just more friction that keeps you from deploying. And then where else we can start? Again, if you have the resources, refactor some applications. For newer technologies, some of the newer languages really handle containers a lot better than the older ones. Go runs amazing in a container because it has no runtime dependencies. Just stick it in a container and go. Node.js, Python, I love putting Python in a Docker image because it's all just right there, and Python can own the image, right? It can own the system. It can think it's God. Update your application dependencies, newer and better libraries. This is as much for container and cloud savviness as it is for security. Make sure that you're secure on your stuff. I can't emphasize that enough. This is one of the more important ones, though. Add your health checks. You've got to have health checks. If you don't already have them in the cloud, well, you should. But with containers, you really need a health check, especially once you move into orchestrators, because the orchestrators are going to monitor these containers for you, and if they don't have a place to monitor your health check, they can't keep you resilient, and they can't replace defunct containers. Service discovery, add some kind of service discovery so that when it comes up, it's smart enough to figure out where to go to get its configuration. And some of the products that can do that is Consul, Netflix, Eureka. And like I said, also externalize your configuration. etcd and Consul are another thing. These are just glorified key value stores, but they are as super valuable. We implemented some Consul clusters in our environments a few months ago, and they've enabled a lot of really nice things, but the biggest thing they enabled us to do was literally be able to automate the complete refresh of an environment. So after a big release, our engineers would have to go in and redo that environment. They'd have to go piece by piece by piece and run a whole bunch of Jenkins jobs, one after the other. Because we have this and we know what's in that new environment and what got released in prod last week, all I got to do now is push a button, and they can go from nothing to a fresh environment based on the latest prod release. It takes a while, right? This doesn't happen overnight, but they can do it with one button push now instead of having to go and push a whole bunch of buttons and then troubleshoot what happened. And as part of building these containers, you're going to have to go back and you're going to have to review and refine your CI/CD processes. I'm a big fan of scripted pipelines. If you've ever lost a Jenkins job, especially if you're in a shared Jenkins environment, if you've ever had somebody delete your Jenkins job, you know what a pain it is to get it back. They're not easy to get back. You've probably put some time into figuring out how to make this thing work right. And as you're scripting your pipeline, you're going to start to see patterns emerge. Grab these patterns, stick them off in their own little library in GitHub or in whatever you use for your source control. Make your build jobs as user-friendly as possible, because it won't always be you running that build job. Someone else has come out behind you and probably run that job too. So I like to tell people, build it for somebody else. Don't just build it for yourself, because you're not always going to be the one, right? Someone else also needs to know how to work this and needs to know what you were thinking when you built this. Specifically for application builds, remove any necessary steps. Jez said you can delete tests. Do it. If it doesn't work anymore, delete the test. You can do it. You have my permission too, but I think his is probably better, right? I don't know. But seriously, anything that you don't need to do anymore, don't do it. If you don't need to build this thing twice, don't build it twice. Build it once. Update your automation tools, Maven, Gradle, NPM, and use the right tool for your language. Please don't build a Node.js app with Maven. You laugh, but I've seen this. Test. We're all DevOps engineers. We know about testing. Test, test, test. Version your every build. Don't build snapshots. Every build should be unique. Why? One, rolling back is so important, right? But two, and Docker makes this so easy, You can version in Docker, and you can then have it also have another name, right? You get multiple labels with Docker. It makes it so much easier than some of the legacy languages. And script the pipeline. Script the pipeline. Deployments, same thing. Remove any unnecessary steps. If you've got an application that's defunct that you were reporting into as part of your pipeline, take that call out, right? You don't need that anymore. If you've got anything else in the pipeline that doesn't exist anymore, take it out. You don't need it. Parameterize your deployments, but only if you have to. If you've gotten into this full run anywhere mindset, you might not need any parameters. You might be able to just push a button because the code can figure out where it's at, and the code can configure itself. But do add deployment metadata. When you do deploy, have it update console, have it update etcd to tell it, I'm this version of this application. And the service discovery also. If, like I said a minute ago, if it can configure itself, well, you don't need any parameters on your deployment. It can just, you just hit the button and go. How many people like to just hit a button and go? Anybody? Nobody? Yeah, okay. And again, script the pipeline. Script it. It gives you so much flexibility. Now, it would be remiss of me to tell you to go and containerize something without giving you some guardrails, some guidelines around containerizing. Partly because Docker and containers, even beyond this run anywhere mindset, they require their own mindset shift. You have to change the way you think about these things. So one of the things that I wish someone had told me when I first started building Docker images, start with a small base image. Start with something like Alpine or BusyBox, right? These small base images that have a minimal footprint in them. Minimize your number of layers. So as you're building and as you're writing out a Docker file, every line is a new layer, right? Make your run commands look like a really, really long one-liner. Docker has a new ability to do these multi-stage builds. Google it. I don't really have a lot of time to talk about it, but basically you do one build and then you take something from that build and stick it in the next build, and you end up with a significantly smaller final image. And use the .docker ignore. It's just like .git ignore. Use that to make sure that things that you don't ever want to get into your Docker image never make it in there, right? Image safety guidelines. Only use trusted base images. Check Docker Hub. If you're going to Docker Hub, you're going to get an official image. Look at it. It'll have a list of vulnerabilities. That's something they started a couple years ago. Look at that. Make sure you're not about to pull a Docker image that is tainted, shall we say. Make sure you pre-scan on your own, too. If you've got a tool, pre-scan these images. Docker Trusted Registry will do that. That's part of the Docker Enterprise Edition suite. X-Ray for Artifactory will do it. And like I said, Docker Hub will do these also. So let's talk about what not to do. When you start building an image, don't install anything you don't need. If you don't need curl, don't do it. If you don't need wget, don't do it, right? One of the big no-nos today, it didn't used to be, but today, don't run SSH in a Docker image in a container. Don't do it. You don't need it. There are better ways to get into it and to check things out. Don't create large images. Don't start from large images. If you're starting from Ubuntu or Debian or Red Hat latest, you're already setting yourself up for a huge final image because those things start in the hundreds of megabytes, sorry. Start with those ones that I suggested, Alpine or BusyBox. Never pass your root file system as the context, the build context. I don't know that that's much of a problem. I don't think I've ever seen an example that did that. But it is possible, whenever you do a Docker build, to pass / as your build context. Don't do that, because you're going to end up with a copy of your entire hard drive in your Docker image. And if you're pushing that to Docker Hub, you just shared your whole hard drive. And don't rely on community images. Community images are, derivatives. Someone did something really cool and they shared it up on Docker Hub. Look at it. Look at his Docker file and see what he did, because he probably came up with a really good idea. Look at what he did and then replicate that and adapt that to your own use. Don't just use his image. So we've done all this work. We can run our application anywhere. Where do I go from here? The answer to that is orchestrators. But let's start simple. Orchestrators is the end. Let's start simple. Don't re-architecture just for this. Do not re-architect your application just because you got it into a container. I literally told this to somebody yesterday. They were like, oh, we're going to build this. We got to put it in ECS. No, don't do that. That's extra work. That's not an MVP. MVP is get it in a container and get it back on the same architecture. Why? Baby steps, right? Get comfortable, especially if you've never done this before. If you've never worked with containers before, Docker has some little quirks, and you need to find them. And Docker's going to have quirks with your application. It's going to. Just accept that and play with this for a while. If it means you run this in dev and then in QA for a little while before you're really comfortable putting it in prod, that's okay. You do you. Do it where you're comfortable. Do it where it makes sense for your organization and your application. Once you've done that, move up to Docker Compose. Docker Compose basically lets you create a YAML file, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, that describes a multi-container application. You get up there, you do this, you run this Docker Compose file, and you end up with your entire application running on one host, right? And perhaps say you're already over spec'd. Say you're running this in EC2, and you're already over spec'd, and you're running 3 instances of each piece, and it's just one application on each. And you know you've got plenty for these. So say you have a 2-container piece, take it, run them now in Docker Compose, cut your spend in half right there. I just halved your EC2 spend for this application because now I only need to run 3 instances instead of 6. And then once you're comfortable there, we move up to an orchestrator. What's an orchestrator? John Williams is an orchestrator, but not that kind of orchestrator. An orchestrator is a suite of software that manages the containers for you. It usually runs as part of a cluster. It monitors the health, and if it finds one that's died, it destroys it and brings it back up without, hopefully, your application going down. Self-healing gives you load balancing automatically, at least some of them do, some of them don't. Kubernetes will. We'll talk about that in just a second. And it provides service discovery within the cluster, right? So that these endpoints can find each other really easy. And your platform options for this, again, I said Kubernetes. Apparently, Kubernetes is the place to be. I was told at DockerCon this year, you should have gone to KubeCon instead. Sorry, I didn't know. But Kubernetes apparently really is taken off. Docker Enterprise Edition is another option. Docker Enterprise Edition will get you Kubernetes, by the way. If you want Kubernetes, but you don't want the complexity, Docker Enterprise Edition is surprisingly easy to deploy. It really isn't bad. We actually did this for a hackathon not too long ago. We wrote some scripts from Terraform. We were able to get it deployed in AWS and in, is anybody here from Capital One? GCP. DCOS from Mesosphere, they also claim to be able to orchestrate Kubernetes. I have not messed with that in a while. I have messed with DCOS. It's been a while, though. They've done some upgrades since the last time I messed with it. Or all 3 of the big clouds have some kind of Kubernetes infrastructure as a service. If it were me, I would choose that one, because now I don't have to manage Kubernetes. Let them do it. They know how to do it better than I do. All I got to do is tell it how many agents I want. And the other neat thing is if I am in multiple clouds and I'm using Kubernetes, I only need 1 file to deploy to any of them. 1 file describes my application, pulls my containers, spins up my load balancers, and gets my application running. And it doesn't get any easier than that, right? 1 file to get to anywhere I need to get. On-prem, in the cloud, doesn't matter. So in summary, no, I am not an evil robot. We talked about the run anywhere mindset, getting into the idea that I can run an application anywhere, anytime. It's containers with dependencies included. We talked about the benefits. We talked about making it easier to develop. We talked about potential cost savings. We talked about how to get there. I just sat up here and told a bunch of DevOps engineers, do better DevOps. And I may not should have, but. And then after that, I said, this is what you do once you've got there. Once you can run this thing anywhere, you can save all kinds of money by moving it into Kubernetes. I didn't talk about densification. I should say that real quick. Kubernetes lets you densify your applications, right? Let you just fill these instances up with containers, right? And get you, that's where your cost savings really come in. And that, of course, is rhetorical, although Bohemian Rhapsody is not. So thank you very much. This has been enjoyable. Thank you for having me very much.
Testing. There we go. Thank you very much. That was great. 3 quick announcements before we go to lunch. I know some of you saw me yesterday and you're thinking, is this going to go on? No, that was yesterday. This is today. There is an area for smoking. It is not right outside the building. If you're smoking right outside the building, you should have been on fire and someone had just put you out. So don't smoke right outside the building. Go over between the parking garage and the other building, or just ask someone where the smoking area is. They will accommodate you, just not in the area right outside the doors. Also, we have a brain tone map thing downstairs. I'm not sure what that is. Sounds a little ominous. I don't know if we're going to open a portal to another dimension or something like that. But brain tone mapping will be downstairs. And vegan selections. If you selected vegan, ask a server, and they will bring out a specific vegan plate for you. Vegetarian options have been included this year as well. Last year we had a lot of vegan options, but they were very popular. I think people didn't realize that some people specifically need vegan, and it wasn't just an option for everyone. But if you do want vegan, just ask a server and they'll bring it out to you. So what do you guys think so far? How's it going? Yeah? Oh, good. Thank you. Fantastic. We had a great turnout. We sold out again this year, and we're very happy to have you all here. We're very grateful to Capital One being our Diamond Location sponsor. There are 3 serving lines, 1 right out there and 2 out here on this side, which, on your side would be your right, my side my left. And then, of course, there's Nitro Cold Brew and other coffees and gelato downstairs. So have fun. Be back here in about an hour, and we'll get going. Oh, yeah, hold on. I should have said you can eat in here or you can eat out in the foyer or wherever you want, but you can come back in here with your food.
Also, hi. Hello, I'm Carlos. I'm one of the organizers this year. If you're doing an Ignite talk and you have not seen me this morning, I will be right there. Find me. Thank you.